Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvot v'tzivanu la'asot v'divrei Torah. Amen. Okay, so let me explain. Whoops, sorry. Let me explain what I mean when I say this is one of the most important portions. What I mean is that it is a pivotal portion in that we are now transitioning from talking about one family, Noah's family, to the entire Jewish family. We are going to transfer from a world of sort of mythic, primeval characters like Adam and Eve, and we're going to transition into real people like Abraham and Yaakov and all of these people that we're going to meet in the next few weeks. These are people who have real personalities, who have real characteristics that we can relate to. So we are evolving here. And the other reason it is so important is because it lays out the foundation for the whole rest of the Torah. It lays out the beginning of our history, our theology, everything. And it sets up the discussion of our covenantal relationship with God. So it's kind of a big deal. All right. So it's all of these things are encapsulated in the very beginning of the portion when God calls to Abram to make a radical change in his life. So let's read. I need three.
We have a page?
Yes. We're going to be on Plout, page 91, and Women's Commentary, page 61.
Which book are we in? Where are we?
We're in Genesis.
Genesis
12.
Genesis 12. Okay.
Is that first one?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Can I have three volunteers? Who would like to read? Diane? Anyone else?
Yeah, and the sound is on. And what is it? 12, 1.
2, and who's my third? Doris. Okay, so you're going to go one after the other. And I want you to read slowly because this is really beautiful language, even in the English. So,
is this the call of Abram?
Yes, so 12:1.
Okay.
First reader, go ahead.
Your birthplace.
No, the eternal one.
Okay, up on top. Okay. The eternal one said to Abram, go forth from your land, your birthplace, your father's house, to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and it shall be a blessing.
Okay, well, thank you, Diane. Unfortunately, you covered everybody else's line. So
oh, sorry, you should have said stop.
It's okay. Sorry about that, guys. But so what is God asking of his name is Avram at this point. He's not Abraham until the end of this portion. What is he asking Avram to do? What is he telling him to do? Susie.
I'm sort of going to quote what Rabbi Nanis told us last night about this portion, relating it to having to leave a place that you're very comfortable and go out and push yourself to do something that isn't in your comfort zone. Did I get it?
I think you definitely got it. Does anybody have any other ideas? Eric?
Sorry, I'm late.
Okay. Abraham was given a special mission from God to like preach the gospel and everything like that. And in a pre-Torah universe. And also when he changed his name, it was like he changed his character from an ordinary guy to a preacher and a leader, and
Mhm.
all and people who change the name, and also Hebrew names are like a four-tenth of what is going to happen to them.
Oh,
Like,
very interesting.
huh? Like,
Thank you. That's interesting to
I
know.
want to tell you something. My Hebrew name was Ephraim Israel, and it was a forte that I would be the leader and the caregiver of my family. You know,
Excellent.
because when I was cared for a sister with brain injury, a father with Alzheimer's, and a mother with cancer. So I took care of them as best I can using all the knowledge that I accrued about the healthcare industry. Thank you very much for your kindnesses.
Thank you. Kevin, I see your hand.
I have a question, which, I hope someone can answer, but at what point was land owned? Like, your father's land, you own it, as opposed to being like a Native American Indian and just, roaming.
I can't answer that, but I think what is happening in that phrase is he's saying it's getting progressively more difficult. He's saying leave your land. Okay, that's your land. Now let's make it a little more personal. Let's leave the place where you were born. And now let's make it even more personal. Now you're going to go to a land that I will show you. Oh, first the father's house. So we have land, place of birth, father's house. So
So is it not something that you could go back to later on? Because, there's
I
that.
I don't know the answer to that, but I think symbolically what it's saying is leave everything you're comfortable with and go forth and do what? Does he really know where he's going?
Mm-mm.
Ray?
Thank you. I have an observation, a sort of overlapping context observation that I am noticing for the first time when I was looking at those three sentences that you've put before us. And it occurred to me, as it often does when I see a parsha that I think I knew in the past what it was, and I realized, I never really asked where this came from. So, it begins, Adonai said to Abraham, go forth from your land, etc. And I'm like, wait a minute, what do we know about Abraham in this moment? And I think it hadn't occurred to me to question that before. And I just looked at the end of Noah to see how he comes up, and he just comes up a couple of, in our English, paragraphs earlier. Terah begot Abram, and then Abram is just in a list of names. And next mention, then Abram and Nahor took wives. Abram's wife was named Sarai, and Nahor's, etc. And then the only other thing we know about Abram, finally, and Sarai was barren. She had no offspring toward the end of Genesis 11. And so I find fascinating that we get to the beginning of this parsha, and all we know about Abram is he's one in a list of names, and we know more about Sarai at this point, that she's barren. We know not a lick of information about Abram. So Abram, in a sense, is defined by his predicament, that he is a man married with a wife who is barren. And so just by what we know and what we don't know, it's interesting that the context of his becoming important is framed in the predicament of his family.
I think that's excellent. And it actually brings me to my second question, which is why Avram? Why does God pick him of all the people to be the quote first Jew? Why him? We don't know anything about him, right? Does anybody have any ideas of why he was chosen? Mara and Harv.
Well, I think it goes back to what I was just about to say, where we're told that Abraham must be a blessing. And So my conclusion would be that Avram was chosen because he had the ability to be a blessing.
Okay. Do we know that for a fact, though? No, right? But I guess you can say that everyone has that potential to be that person. So he's sort of a blank slate in a way in the beginning. And we're going to learn more about him as we go forward. To what extent do we kind of rise to the occasion when you're asked to do something that's very difficult? What does he do? Does he listen to God? Does he actually hear God? That's the other question.
Well, we know he argues with God.
Right? So we know he's contentious and defends the good and the true.
He has to figure out what he's expected to do and why.
Right, because
Why did you choose me of all people?
Exactly. Brad.
Yeah, I was in my mind comparing this to God telling Noah, who walked with God, to get on a boat. And here Abraham is being told to leave his birthplace. And in neither case is there any questioning at this point. You know, I mean, later on, we get a questioning Abraham, but not now, not yet. He's really an empty shell.
And he has no idea what this mission is yet. He's just saying, leave. Leave what you feel comfortable with. So some people define the term lech lecha as go, get going, like get going on this mission I'm going to send you on. Some people do not define it very literally, which is go to yourself. What does that mean? Go to yourself. Susie?
Could that mean go within yourself, search inside yourself?
Yes, very good. Rebecca?
I'm just going to go back a couple of conversations. Was Avram chosen because one, he was the eldest son, and two, isn't there a story that he was smashing his father's idols?
There is that story, but it's actually not in the Torah. It's a midrash that was made up to kind of explain what we completely don't know when we're reading this, which is why him. But the story gives you a background saying, look at him. He's not like everyone else. He's questioning the status quo, right? We're not going to believe in idols necessarily, even though our dad, this is his business, he makes idols. So in that sense, it makes sense that he would be chosen, right? So that's what a lot of times what happens is when there's something in the Torah that is kind of vague, the rabbis over the hundreds of years have made up stories to explain, to fill in those blanks. So that is a perfect example of that. Steve.
I think what he's saying is, look, you're 75 years old. You're still living at home with your parents. You have to go and be a real person on your own. And by the way, that person can be really great and do a lot of things for the world.
Yep, can't argue with that. Susie.
Wait, allow me to disrupt. I wanted to point out that Rabbi Stan has joined us.
Oh, yay. Where are you?
Oh, yay.
Oh, there he is.
I know you have too many faces to look at, so
yeah. We're so happy to see you. How are you?
Solace.
Hi, Rabbi.
How are you doing? Don't ask. Wonderful to see you.
Should I go on with my comment?
Yes, please do. Yes.
I think that Abram didn't question God. He was 75 years old. God selected him. And I think Abram, like a lot of us presently, good things happen to good people, bad things happen to good people. This is what's happening to me. God has selected me. And I don't think that I think maybe he was really flattered. And I guess my theory is very simplistic, but sometimes we read too much into things. And that's what I think, that he was chosen and he felt really good about it and he was going to take on the challenge.
Well, in a way, when you make it not so complicated, it can apply to anyone. When we are faced with some kind of a situation where we're called upon to do something, it might not have occurred to us that we can even do it. If we act like Avram, we're going to take up that challenge. We just do it because it's presented itself before us.
God noticed that he could do it. Maybe Abram didn't notice it himself, but God did. And it took that little push for him to say, I'm going to go for it.
Excellent.
My theory.
Ray? I can't see you, so.
Thank you. I'm having another sort of thought interesting to me about, again, context and presumptions. And I'm thinking about if the rabbi is trying to find an explanation for God's choosing Abram, we're driven to create the drash about his smashing his father's idols and all of that. Even that, perhaps, this may be a little bold of me, reflects a presumption on the part of the scholars and rabbis that there's somehow supposed to be a rationale for who gets chosen when. And I need to look again, or somebody else who knows the verses more readily can look again at Moshe. And we do have what appears to be an explanatory rationale for his getting chosen when he pushes back against the Pharaoh's treatment of the slaves. And
what's the rationale?
That suggests to me, but again, I want to be very careful because I'm not looking at that text right now and I don't want to distort. But by my recollection of the story generally, is there's an implication there that God notices Moshe's righteousness in acts that God has had a chance to witness, and therefore appears in the form of the burning bush and beseeches him to go on to his mission as a leader and savior. But I believe, and someone who knows this better in this moment, please correct me, I believe that there is never explicit text saying God took notice of Moses and did this because of his character. I believe that though that's a reasonable inference, it still is an inference. And if we are predicating on narratives like that, an expectation that God must choose designees, leaders, disciples according to that character, that in itself is a presumption on our part based on what we're deciding is a precedent from other occurrences in Torah. And it's entirely possible, and this is the second piece of my point, and then I will shut myself up, is that it's totally possible that sometimes God chooses people the way any of us who needs help in a situation, like in a committee meeting or whatever else we might do, not according to character only, but according to who's there. And any of us who has ever tried to rope in a volunteer to do something sometimes asks people we don't know very much about, but they're there. Do you happen to have time to join the telephone tree?
The people
so
who show up,
that
yeah.
could be what's happening here. I think we should at least accept that as a possible circumstance, because God created Adam and Eve, and they turned out pretty flawed. And is God therefore supposed to be infallible? Huge question we won't tackle now. But I just want to recognize we're making some assumptions when we're saying, well, God picked Abram, therefore God had evidence to do that. Maybe it doesn't work that way.
Well, interesting, because in the context of the whole story, we know that Abraham is the progenitor of our people, the Jewish people. So presumably, the nature of his character has some significance. It says something about us as a people. And what does it say? Rabbi Stanley. Can't hear you, you're muted.
Something nice. Hi, it's really good to be with you and to watch Donna lead and doing a great job. And Tamara and I, next week, we're going to try, if with the permission of the doctors, we're going to try to run a session next week. I wanted to add that this conversation from Ray and others reminded me of God's call to Jeremiah. When God called to Jeremiah, he said to Jeremiah, I've known you from the day of your conception, from the day of your birth. You were someone of whom I was aware, and I want you. And I want you. So that it's not at least from this one example, not a happenstance. God selects the right one for a mission. And every once in a while, when I'm involved with people who are really troubled by the challenges they confront, I say, by the way, in Jeremiah, it says that God chooses the right people for the right job. So if you suddenly have this job, God wants you to have it. And they don't listen to me anyway.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, God is not, God kind of knows who he's dealing with. It's not like he's just randomly saying, oh, you over there down that desert dune, you want to come lead a people for me. He does know them. We're the ones who don't know who Abraham is yet. But given what you know about him, how does he represent the Jewish people? I can't see if that's a hand. Kevin, is that your hand?
That is my hand. I was just reading like line 16 where it says, and because of her, it went well with Abram, and he acquired sheep, oxen, asses, male and female slaves, she-asses, and camels, which means he sold his wife Sarah to the Pharaoh and acquired all his wealth. We're talking about Abram, and we're not talking about Sarah. And I mean, when you say what does Abram say about the Jewish people, I mean, that doesn't sound too good.
It's kind of a mixed bag. Yeah, he's got all this faith and ingenuity, essentially, because he's willing to go forth and do something that's outside his comfort zone. But he also does crap like that. So he's certainly not a perfect, idol that we should set up as our wonderful progenitor. But that's kind of true of all the people in the Torah. If you look at all the patriarchs, they all have flaws, which is kind of interesting because usually when people write the story of their history, their past, their origin story, they say, oh, we came down from the gods, or we came down from this perfect person. And here we've got this person who's got a lot of facets to him. He does good, he does not so good, right? Risa, is that you? Or maybe that was Rabbi Stan.
No.
No? Okay.
I'm just moving around.
Okay, Steve.
Well, I think that we have to be not perfect because only God can be perfect. And if we're perfect, what do we strive to do? So people are flawed. That's kind of the human condition. And the goal is to elevate yourself as much as you can. And I think Avram's flexibility and ability to accept challenges and thrive, it's kind of what's kept Jewish people alive for all these millennia, which hasn't been true of the people who are contemporaries of Abraham.
That is really good. That's really good. It's not just that he has any particular skill. It's that he wishes to try. He's going to try to make himself better or different, which is actually kind of something rare for most of us. Usually it's much easier to just stay in your old house, in your old place, and continue doing what you've always done. But he shows some chutzpah in a way, getting up, and he's going to change everything based on this voice he hears in his head. So that says something kind of great about us. If that represents us, that's another question.
Donna?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I enjoy looking at is to try to figure out why the editors of a passage wrote the passage. That's a wonderful question. Why did they write it? They weren't copying it, they weren't imitating. Why did they write it? And you might ask yourself, well, okay, why is the story of Abraham spread out with those events, the events in his life? And every once in a while, I get the feeling the rabbis are trying to build a case for Abraham, Avram, whoever, Sam, to become the proper leader of the Jewish people. And so you ask yourself, what did those editors consider to be the proper skills of a Jewish leader? That's what's going on here. What are the proper skills?
And he grows into his part. He grows into the role, essentially. And we see it happen.
Yes, it becomes a whole different question. They wanted a leader, whatever, who was willing to leave home and start new. Okay, they wanted that. They wanted a leader who would be obedient to God, even at the cost of something precious. So Isaac. So they build in that story. And if you look at the rest of the Abraham events, my goodness, we're getting a whole agenda as to what a Jewish leader should be.
I agree. This happens not in this portion, so I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But yeah, it's right. We see him leading in a war. We see him making peace between people. All of these great qualities that he develops as the story develops. So as we all evolve, he evolves too. to change the subject a little bit, what does it mean to be a blessing? God says, you shall be a blessing. Susie.
I just want to go back a little bit to what we were just saying about the challenge that Abram had and related to, it's very important to me for things that happen in the Torah to be able to align them with life today and what's going on. And I was very moved last night when Rabbi Nanas took this story of Abram having these challenges to possibly make big changes in his life. And she was relating it to the tumultuous week that we all had last week. And I was very grateful for that because most of us, I think you'll agree, had a really hard week. And the essence was related to this portion. Abram had to swallow hard probably and move on and move on and move on. And the Jewish people had to do the same thing. So it's very timely. So I thought I would put that in.
Yeah, we're all moving into that great unknown.
Yes.
That God's going to show us, but we have no idea what that is going to be.
Yes.
Right? So God says that he's going to bless all the people that have blessed us and curse all the people that have cursed us. How has that worked out for us? Brad. I can't, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I want to come back to the blessing question and a Hebrew question. Is it saying you are a blessing or you will be a blessing?
Oh, I have plenty of, yeah, I have a whole enchilada. Thank you.
It seems that that's a big question because I think the Hebrew makes it sound like it could be your name will be a blessing. I'm going to defer to Rabbi Tamara to explain what the Hebrew version of this is. You shall be a blessing. That's how it's often translated, but I don't think that's exactly correct.
I think the Hebrew suggests you be a blessing.
The imperative.
Just, it's not the name because it would be a different
name. Great.
But you be a blessing. It's a command. It's not in Parshat Kedoshim, it says, Heyu Kedoshim. This is clearly you be a blessing.
It's interesting because the Plout doesn't translate it that way. It says, I will make your name great and it shall be a blessing. That's not correct?
I don't think it's correct.
Okay, well, I believe you more than I believe Plout. Howard.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, it's a huge difference.
I'm with Tamara too. I agree with Donna.
On this point, Robert Alter has a fairly long discussion about how there's some questions about the text, and the Masoretic text has it vocalized one way, but the other texts have it, not vocalized, I guess. And he says that it means you shall be a blessing, and he points out that it must be that because in the past it's a sequence. In the past it's always been curses, this curse and that curse and that curse. Now here for the first time, God is blessing what will be the Jewish people or man.
Interesting. Well, so basically what in the bottom line is, what does that even mean? How are we to be a blessing?
also raises a question again about the translation. Why did the Hebrew Union College decide to change it? Was there some political agenda here, or is it just random? The guy just looked it up in the dictionary and made a choice and ignored all the evidence, or it happens again and again?
Yeah, I don't know the answer, but maybe one of the rabbis who are sitting here knows the answer. No comment.
Well, Hebrew College made some interesting moves over the centuries, like pulling Hebrew out of the logo of the college. I've never forgiven them for that. Never, and I never will. And the translation wasn't, it was the CCAR, and it was the committee that did these things. And
CCAR, right? Not Hebrew Union College. CCAR. Yeah, sorry.
the people feel free to manipulate translations in order to meet current needs. When you look at any translation, you are looking at something which someone worked over with a goal in mind. It's not, oh, I wish it were. I'm going to sit there and confront a complicated verse, and I am going to give what I honestly believe is the fundamental root meaning of that verse, unless that meaning contravenes something that's important. And then it becomes a negotiated translation.
Well, they say that all translation is interpretation.
Yes, period.
Right? So everything is kind of a little bit, you can't make it a perfect one-on-one translation, but in this case, it kind of makes a big deal. It's a difference between you will be a blessing versus your name will be a blessing, i.e. your people, your reputation. It's kind of different, right? Marina.
Well, Jewish people are the first to bring monotheism, and from Abraham or Abraham come the other major monotheistic religions. So, with all his flaws and all our flaws, this may be what is meant, that the Jewish people be a blessing to mankind by channeling this new attitude and new religion.
Interesting. So we're a blessing by bringing monotheism to the world.
Well, it's a first step. There may be other ways of being a blessing, but
so
yes.
That's one of them. Any others? Kevin. And then Mara and Harv.
Okay, I keep thinking of the movie Poltergeist, where they say "get out," and they say no, I'm staying. And in this case, Abram got out, and he's either going to be blessed or going to be cursed. I'm sure he'll be cursed if he would have stayed. But then, I guess I don't think he had faith when he told Sarah, "Please say you are my sister, that it may go well because of me." It says, "If the Egyptians see you and think she is my wife, they will kill me and let you live." So if he believed in God, he would say, "You're my wife," and
assume God would save him.
He didn't. And then I guess it goes later to say that there were many plagues on the account of Sarah. So it's I don't know how long she was there, but it doesn't say a time frame, at least here it doesn't. But it could be years, it could have been days, it's like, but many plagues. It just seems like there wasn't the faith of God at that point.
His faith is certainly kind of intermittent, shall we say. Mara and Harv were next, and then Brad.
Just a brief comment that the notion that Abraham or Avram agrees to be a blessing without knowing what that means reminds me of, and I don't have the wording correctly, when we're given the 10 Commandments and the Jewish people say, we will do, before they know exactly what it is they're going to be doing. And so that seems like a motif that runs through the Torah.
We will do, and then we will believe. Like we do it, and then we'll get to understand why. Interesting. Brad.
Trust. Isn't that trust?
That's trust, faith, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I love Tamara's explanation that this is more of a commandment, because what that's telling me is, getting back to Ray's point, is this just a random type choice that God saw potential in Abram. And at this point, that's all he is to us, is a potentiality. And of course, more will be revealed. But again, this also gets back to what Rabbi Stan saw, that this is, God saw something in Abram. And I think the fact that this is a commandment to Abram lends credence to that interpretation, that this just isn't some kind of random choice.
And it's what I love about this is that we all have potential, right? It's a question of, do we grow into our potential or not? Mm-hmm. Rabbi Tamara?
Yeah, I want to follow up on that. What I love about the story, with all the times that Avram is afraid, the story is not about blind faith. It's about taking risks and building trust so that it takes experience and encounters. It's not that Avram is saying, well, I'll do everything you say and then blindly follows, but rather it's going to take steps of encounter and experience so that by the time we get to the most famous or infamous story, trust has been built. So it's never about simply blindly leaping into the relationship, but beginning with trust, but checking it as you go. And I think that's going back to notion of leadership, back to Rabbi's standpoint, those qualities, the daring to try something new is what this leader is modeling. And I am stealing that vision directly from Rabbi Stan.
Well, that seems fair.
Donna, may I say something? That reminds me of
Steve
not being.
Whisper.
May I say, what she was just saying about trying something new, that can apply to even in a romantic standpoint, if you want to fall in love again, being very scared to step out into the unknown and trust someone and believe. But God's rewarding, and I'm just going to say, thank God. It's wonderful life. I agree with that.
Thank you. Steve was next.
I see a little different way of reading this. And that is, God is telling Abram that he's going to make him a nation. I'm going to make your name great. I'm going to bless you, and you will be a blessing. And I think what he said, God is saying, I'm doing these things. This is who you are and will be. And that is what makes you a blessing. And it's partly because that's what Abraham brings to the world, which is a blessing for the people to come. So I actually think it's God that's doing this and setting up the very things that make him a blessing, the way this is written.
Well, what's interesting is that it's not a one-sided deal. The thing that ends this portion, and when he gets his name changed to Avraham, is when he enters into a covenant. So it's a mutual relationship. A covenant is a contract, right? So both sides have to give something and get something. And so what do you think that God is expecting to get from us, and what is he going to give to us? What do we give him? It's kind of more, I think, difficult to say, because we know that he's going to give us land and make us very numerous and all that. What do we do in return?
We give him our efforts to improve the world, to create the world that he envisioned.
And I would add, we leave everything that we knew before. So to do that does take some element of faith or trust or courage.
Has God made good on his side of this covenant? Has he made us as numerous as the stars?
No.
No, not yet,
No, there's
right?
still time, right? Not yet.
I like that, not yet.
Some people think that it's not that we, the Jews, are the numerous people. It's that our ideas have trickled down to the Christians, to the Muslims, to the whole world in a way, and that all of those people who are affected by those religions are more of the people. So in a sense, what we have influenced has become as numerous as the stars. But I think it would be better if we were actually just more people. Donna.
I think you're right. They've copied us and everything that is on the planet, everything that we've done. We're the foundation. They have copied us in every religion, and we're God's chosen. And going into the unknown, I can relate to that. I appreciate the study, and so good to see Rabbi Davis feeling better, and Susie and everybody. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Mommy.
So, I mean, this is not a very lovely thought, but it's a true thought. If we are supposed to populate the world with our ideas and so on, think of our history. Think of every period of time we're being slaughtered out of this world. What is the answer to that when you're saying these lovely things, interpreting it in a lovely way? And now today, even today, what's going on with our people in Israel and all the anti-Semitism, and just happened in Amsterdam. What is the answer that when you study or you're in the synagogue, that's the answer to the reality of what has happened, rather than these lovely things that we're saying today?
It's certainly the reality reflects back on this story, and it kind of makes you question whether God is keeping his part of the contract up, right? Kevin, you had something to say?
Yeah, I just want to say that as numerous of the stars sounds a lot nicer than multiplied like locusts and grasshoppers. So I think in terms of what they were saying, we did multiply like, as numerous as the stars.
Interesting. Well, I love this story because it's really, you can apply it to your own life. It's about taking on the unknown. It's kind of growing into who you are.
Good.
All of these things. Do we realize our potential?
Yeah.
And what it says about us as a group of people. the fact that we're even still here is kind of amazing. We continue to at least attempt to be a blessing, and we are continuing to try to listen to the injunction of go forth, keep going forth. Brad, and then you'll be the last one, and then we need to go to Kaddish.
Yeah, I mean, a few verses later, we're told after Abraham's been told to leave his birthplace, where does he end up? He ends up in a land with the plague. So is this the first step of Abraham being tested? I mean, we know that our patriarchs are tested again and again and again. Is this the first test?
Well, all I can say is anybody who has to circumcise themselves at age 98, that's a test. That is a commitment to that God. On that happy note, we're going to remember the people who are no longer with us. And is there anyone here who's observing a yard site or is in mourning? If so, please raise your hand as you wish. So we remember in our congregation those who passed away during the past month: Melvin Adler, Aaron Brock, Paul Dieter, Susan Kaplan, Stacy Carton, Phyllis Castle, Edith Kriegier, Irit Kriegier, Alexander Loinger, Shalom Mino Maimon, Miriam Reisman, Wad Salem. And the yard sites that have occurred during this past week: Dean Ambrose, Khalis Salehani Azizian, Herman Bayerwald, Jacob Bagelman, Rebecca Baker, Milton Eli Barron, Rose Baruch, Richard Becher, Mura Ben-Gera, Goldie Benjamin, Joshua Reuben Berman, Georgette Bloom, Ruth Brownstein, Stephen David Brody, Gertrude Bubar, Norma Francis Bubar, Sulana Ross Chait, Lisa Cohen, Irving Coleman, Herbert Danamon, Jordan Michael Ehrlich, Rose Metz Ehrlich, Harriet Eppert, Bertrand Mark Feinberg, Edith Barron Fearman, Morton Fearman, Dorothy Tifford Foreman, Ralph Foxman, Rebecca Gartzman, Charles Gerber, Joshua Gerson, David Golden, Howard Goldfeder, Lillian Gordon, Henry Gray, Cindy Guthman, Herbert Hamrell, Jerome Heilbronn, Marion Hirsch, Sally Hullum, Carlisle Immerman, Clarice Jacobs, Edward Jacobs, Bert Jarko, Fred Callett, Ellen Kaufman, Verona Kelman, Haskell Kramer, Saul Kupchik, Shabsa Landa, Beverly Ginsburg Land, Betty Lindner, Ida Lippy, Stephen Loeb, Betsy Marcus, Sonia Margolis, Max Marston, Minnie Meadow, Arlene Miller, Stanley Miller, Eugene Monkarsh, Myron William Morris, Claire Mullen, Dorothy Osmond, Susan Packel, Shirley Pasternak, Rona Paymar, Dorothy Schwartz Petroy, Joseph Pitson, Isidore Pugach, Jack Puro, Tamara Rand, Jean Rappaport, Ari Ravid, Meta Reese, Aaron Reifman, Ruth Rice, Lillian Rhine, Max Rice, Barbara Rich, Helen Rose, Erwin Rosen, Henry Rosenwald, Stuart Sache, Sarah Sager, Lisa Schiller, James Schroeder, Raymond Schwartz, Linda Scher, Ruth Siegel, William Sornoff, Paul Spindler, Leonard Srer, Louis Stark, Louis Tuller, Morris Weinstein, David Westheimer, Tova Winyars, Gary Winnick, and Michelle Zuckerman. And we also pray for those who have died defending the United States of America and the state of Israel. And I apologize for any mispronunciations of these names. If anybody has a name they would like to add to the list, please either put it in the chat or raise your hand and we can hear the name. Or just say it out loud. Say it in your heart. That's fine too. Okay, everybody. Yitgadal, Yitgadash, Yitgadash, Ve'alma, Divra, Hirute, V'yamlich Malchute,
Eichon Yomecha,
V'chaye Dechol Be'esh Ha'agala V'zman
Vizman Kuri,
V'yamru Amen.
Emir Amen.
Yehei Shmei Rabba
Mivarach,
Le'olam
Elam
Ve'alma
Almaya,
Yitbarach
Yitbarach,
V'yitbar
V'yitbar,
V'yitnah V'yitadar V'yitaleh
V'yitaleh, V'yitalal,
Shmei
Kudusha, Brich,
Elam Kol
Kol
Birchata
Birchata V'Shirata,
Tushbachata
V'Shbachata
V'nechama
V'Nechamata,
Amiram
Amiram
B'Alma
B'Alma V'Ru, Amen.
Yehesh Laba Rabba Min Shemaya V'Chaim Aleinu Yalkol Yisrael V'Imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Amav Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Yalkol Yisrael V'Imru Amen.
Amen.
Amen. And Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
Thank you so
shalom.
much,
Thank you.
Donna.
Shabbat
This
shalom.
was lovely.
Thank you, Donna.
Great
Thank you.
class. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Donna.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
Donna.
week.
Have a good week, everybody.
You too.